Hello kindly people of YouTube, Punk Rock Fairy Princess here. It has been a hot second, but I've moved back to Guelph. I'm living in a house with two other girls. We are paying rent, doing groceries, cooking our own food, like holy shit. We are adults now. Yep. Anyway, that's not relevant. A while back I made a video about the Oak Island Money Pit, which is this mystery that I am a little bit obsessed with. I have a shirt. Because of course I have a shirt. Look, it's the cool code thing that I found on that stone, the stone pit, which might actually just be a complete scam, but it's cool. So yeah. Anyway, so I have another mystery to present to you. And it is the mystery of the Santa Maria, which is a ghost ship. And I really like ships and mysteries. So yay, here we go. Okay. On December 5th, 1872, the British brig Dei Grazia spots a ship adrift on choppy waters. They're about 400 miles east of the Azores, which is this group of islands off the coast of Portugal. And Captain Morehouse of the Dei Grazia decides to go in closer because the ship looks like it's having some struggles. And as they get closer, he recognizes the ship as the Santa Maria, which is surprising because the Santa Maria left New York City Harbor 8 days before he did and was bound for Genoa, Italy, and should have already been there and been unloading its cargo. So not seeing anybody on deck, he sends his first mate, Oliver DeVoe, and two other crewmates to kind of check out, to see what's going on. Oliver DeVoe and these two other sailors go aboard the ship and find it absolutely deserted. There's nobody on the ship. They find the sails are partly set, but the ones that are not furled are quite badly damaged, as well as the rigging. And there's some ropes hanging loosely over to the sides. The main hatch is closed in the ship, but the fore and lazarette hatches, the lazarette being in the back of the ship, were open, suggesting that that they had been inspecting the cargo or been airing the cargo, which becomes relevant later on in one of the theories. The ship's papers were also gone, but the charts and maps were still there, although they were fairly strewn about. Most of the crew members' personal belongings were still there, as well as the captain's belongings. The captain was sailing with his wife and his 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, and their belongings were all still intact, and some of them were very valuable. The ship's only lifeboat was missing. It's called a yawl, suggesting that they had abandoned ship. So these types of ships have 2 pumps in them that go all the way down to the bilges, which is the very lowest part of the hold, and that's where a lot of the water accumulates. And because these ships, they're not fully waterproof, obviously, they're made of wood, so often there will be water basically constantly seeping in, and also because the cargo they were carrying, which was industrial alcohol, could also, the barrels could break and then also have liquid into the hold. So they had pumps in them, and the sailors found one of the pumps completely disassembled on the deck, suggesting that they had been for maintenance, or that they were trying to repair the pump. A makeshift sound rod was found on deck. A sound rod is basically like a rod attached to a rope that they would put all the way down to the bottom of the ship, and the rod would have ash on it, so then when you pulled it back up, the amount that was wet, you could tell how much water there was down there and see if you needed to pump. Since it was out on deck, that suggests that they had been using it fairly frequently, because normally this would be stored inside of one of the pumps. So it suggests that they had been a little bit worried about how much water was in the hold, which is weird because when the crew of the Dei Grazia found the ship, there was only 3.5 feet of water in the hold, which for this type of ship wasn't super concerning. The cargo of 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol was largely undamaged. There were a few barrels that were empty, but it's been theorized that these barrels were made out of a slightly more porous wood than the other barrels had been, and it had just seeped out. And the ship was also still had a 6-month supply of food and water. The captain's log last entry was recorded at 5 a.m. on November 25th, and this stated that the ship was within sight of the Azores island Santa Maria, and was about 13 miles away, which was about 500 miles from where the crew of the Dei Grazia found her about 9 days later. Also on the ship, Oliver Deveau found the moldy remains of a child's breakfast, but no other food was left out, so that suggested that whatever happened between breakfast and lunch on that day. So, the Mary Celeste sailed from New York City, bound for Genoa, on November 7th, 1872. And it was manned by a crew of about 7 or 8 crew members. I have read different versions. And the captain was Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs. His wife Sarah was also aboard, and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia. It was a 280-ton brigantine. They battled heavy weather for about 2 weeks to reach the Azores. And the ship had been sailing southeastwards, south of the Azores for the previous several days. Then, before Santa Maria, the ship suddenly changed course to go north, which is unusual because the shoals north of the island of Santa Maria were known for being very dangerous. However, the best anchorage on the island of Santa Maria was São Lourenço Bay, which was on the northeastern part of the island. So if Captain Briggs was intending on stopping there, it would make most sense for him to go up. And since by most accounts I've read he was a fairly experienced captain, he probably would have known how to navigate those shoals and safely make his way to the bay. However, one of the problems on the ship, which they discovered later, was that the ship's chronometer was slow. The chronometer was basically what they used. It was like a timepiece that they used to figure out how far they were from places. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but they found that the chronometer was slow by as much as 8 minutes. So that meant that the Mary Celeste was about 120 miles further west than Captain Briggs had thought. And this could come in to play in some of the theories that I will talk about later. So Captain Morehouse, the captain of the Dei Grazia, after finding the Santa Maria entirely abandoned, split his crew in half between the two ships and sailed them to Gibraltar for the salvage hearings. So basically there was this rule that if a ship's crew found a ship completely abandoned and could safely bring it into harbor, they would get a part of the insurance money for the ship. But there were always hearings to make sure there was no foul play. Now, the attorney in this case suspected some sort of foul play or mischief, so he investigated, but over a span of 3 months, there was hardly any evidence that anything, foul play-like had taken place on the ship. The salvagers did receive payment, but only a sixth of the $46,000 for which the ship had been insured. This was a much smaller amount than they had been expecting and suggests that no evidence of foul play was found, that it was still suspected that the authorities were still not entirely convinced of the crew's innocence. And of course, one of the most mysterious things about this whole thing is that none of the original crew of the Mary Celeste, nor Captain Briggs and his wife and daughter, were ever heard or seen from again. So this pretty much rules out any type of insurance fraud that Captain Briggs had been trying to commit, because he actually had a son who was about 10 years old at the time, I think, who they left in New York so he could go to school. So if Captain Briggs was intending on, committing insurance fraud, possibly in collaboration with Captain Morehouse of the Dei Grazia, that he wouldn't have left his 10-year-old son behind if he was going to disappear off the face of the earth for the rest of his life. The court at the time suspected that the Dei Grazia's crew may have attacked the ship, but this also is very unlikely and pretty much impossible because, like I said, the Santa Maria left New York 8 days before the Dei Grazia did, and Dei Grazia was also a slower ship, so there's no way they could have caught up with the Santa Maria before they got to Gibraltar. So, let's get into the theories. Theory number 1, pirates. One of the theories is that pirates attacked the ship, and that's why the crew is missing. This theory is supported by cuts made on either side of the bow and other markings on the ship, possibly made by an axe, as well as traces of something that looked like blood on various parts of the ship, as well as the captain's sword. However, this was all disproven. The supposed blood on the captain's sword was actually rust. Also, other than the cuts on the bow, there was hardly any damage done to the ship or signs of a struggle, and also the cargo was almost entirely intact, and the ship was still mostly sailable, and they wouldn't have just killed the crew and then, you know, fucked off. Like, we don't need this cargo or this ship, we just kill people for fun. That's not what pirates do. Another theory is mutiny. This is a theory presented fairly early on, I think in the salvage hearings, and this posited that the crew had gotten into the alcohol that the ship was transporting and killed the captain and his family in a drunken stupor, or had committed mutiny. First of all, the alcohol that was on the ship was industrial alcohol, so like not the drinking kind. Secondly, as with the pirate theory, the cargo was almost entirely untouched, and it would not make a lot of sense for the crew to kill the captain and his family, then abandon the ship and the cargo in the lifeboat, which was much less, you know, seaworthy than an actual ship. They probably would have tried to sell the cargo and even the ship possibly in a less than reputable harbor somewhere. You know, like Tortuga. There are various theories that some sort of natural phenomenon could have caused whatever happened on the ship to happen. One theory is that a waterspout, which is kind of like a tornado but like at sea, it could explain the amount of water in the hold and the state of the rigging and the sails. The low barometric pressure generated by the spout could have driven water from the bilges up into the pumps, leading the crew to assume that the ship had taken on more water than she actually had and was in danger of sinking. Therefore, they would have been more likely to abandon ship into the lifeboat. And since, as I said earlier, the chronometer was faulty, they could have thought that they were nearer to land than they actually were, thinking that it would be safer to just strike out in the lifeboat and hope to get to land and stay on a sinking ship. Another natural phenomenon could be if the ship had become becalmed. Becalmed basically means is that there's no wind, and so you're just at the mercy of the seas and the currents. The shoals above Santa Maria, as I mentioned, were known for being dangerous, so Captain Briggs could have feared that the ship would run aground, and thinking that he was closer to the island than he actually was, ordered that they go in the lifeboat instead of staying on the ship and possibly running aground. Also, an earthquake on the seabed, known as a seaquake, could have damaged parts of the cargo, releasing the noxious fumes of the industrial alcohol. The hatches that were open on the ship could suggest that they had tried to air out the cargo hold before the captain ordered them to go onto the lifeboat, fearing an explosion, which has actually happened before, that a ship transporting industrial alcohol exploded. Their intention was probably to try to attach the lifeboat to the ship with some ropes, but in the haste of getting off the ship, maybe they didn't fully secure the ropes, and a burst of wind could have pushed the Mary Celeste away from the lifeboat, leaving the crew and Captain Briggs and his family to the elements. However, there wasn't a lot of damage done to the contents of the hold, so this is also an unlikely theory. All in all, none of these theories really fit because, as I said, the crew of the Dei Grazia managed to sail the ship all the way to Gibraltar from where they found it. So that means it was still in fairly good condition. So at this point, there's no real reason that can be found for why Captain Briggs would have ordered them to abandon ship. So, like I said, it is a mystery. We don't know where the crew and Captain Briggs's family disappeared to. There is, of course, the ever-present theory that they were taken by aliens, which, I mean, if you believe in aliens, that's a sound theory. I don't really believe in aliens, at least not in, you know, the alien abduction type aliens. Anyway, I don't have a very good conclusion to this video. I just thought this was a really cool story that I wanted to talk about. I am currently kind of postponing my Harry Potter reread because, like I said, I'm in Guelph now and I don't actually own the books. I was reading like our family's copies. So unless I end up borrowing them from the library, I don't know. I'll be posting some other types of videos as we go along. Yeah. So, thank you for watching. I'll see y'all later. Bye!